Hey, good evening, everybody, and welcome to Popco the Writers. It is our special Halloween episode, so I hope all of you have had a lovely Halloween, had trick-or-treated, got your candy, and are sitting down to enjoy our takes on some of the best horror movies in our opinion. I will be honest, I did not know what tonight was going to be, and Paul suggested this, and I thought, well, that's absolutely perfect.
Predictable, yet perfect.
Well, yeah. Well, we are still in that kind of dead zone gray area where we don't really have anything to talk about. There's no Marvel, no DC, no...
Yeah, haven't had a big movie or TV show debut.
Right.
So
right. We're going to get the Eternals.
Yep.
And do you plan on seeing that, Paul?
I do.
Okay. And then we're also going to get Disney Plus Day, which will supposed to include a special on Boba Fett, a Boba Fett special, which I'm thinking is probably going to be similar to the Marvel Legends things, where they give you a quick refresh on a character.
Mm-hmm.
Since Book of Boba Fett's coming at the end of the year, I expect a Marvel Legends on Hawkeye soon, before the show debuts on the 24th with 2 episodes. That's going to be spectacular. I am so looking forward to Hawkeye.
It looks like a really good one, and I love Hawkeye.
Yeah. I just got, the reason I was a couple minutes late is I had a package delivered, even on a Sunday on Halloween. I had my copy of The Making of the Marvel Universe.
Ooh.
That new huge book that came out that all these sites are doing stories off of, like how the lady from Marvel threw a sandwich at Kevin Feige when he suggested bringing Spider-Man into the MCU, and all these other stories, and how Anthony Hopkins was about to quit acting when he got the job of doing Thor, and it kind of renewed his invigoration for acting.
Mm-hmm.
So I am thoroughly looking forward to reading that book. I had to leave it out in the other room because I'm coming in here and I've got my phone, I've got my water and some other stuff I needed to bring in. I'm like, I'll have to come back for that after the show.
Yep.
So I'm really looking forward to digging into that. And if there are any interesting tidbits, I will talk about them here. Maybe
you're on the show?
Yes.
That would be great.
I thought so. So yeah, I'll try to put together some of the highlights from the book in case you don't want to spend the original retail price on the book was $150.
Oh, I thought it was $1 million.
It would be hard to sell it at that price.
Yes.
But I did get it off of Amazon, which I know makes me evil. Yes. But I got it for $90 off of Amazon. And I'll be evil for $60. I'm sorry.
It's why Amazon has prospered despite being evil.
Yes.
Temptation.
Yep. Yeah. And the fact that the head of Amazon looks so much like Dr. Evil is just the funniest part.
I'm sure it's just a coincidence.
Yep. Right up there with Lex Luthor, it's like, okay.
Yeah.
So, all right. But tonight is about Halloween. And, I don't know if the contest is over or not. But if it's not yet, today they are supposed to be doing the drawing over on Zenescope's Twitter account. There is one tweet. You got to look for it. What?
Oh, nothing.
They are giving away an NFT to a follower, and it's the cover of the Sleepy Hollow book I did for them. And there's 2 versions being given away. One of them has my and Marat Michael's signatures added to it. And they're doing an estimated value of $1,000. I do not understand NFTs. I know nothing about them. But if they're seriously worth $1,000 and you want to get a chance to enter to win, pop over to Zenescope on Twitter real quick. Hit the like button. That's all you got to do to get a chance to win. And it's a cool cover. It's a very cool Halloween cover. So, all right. We are going to get into our favorite horror movies, which, again, Paul suggested it. And it's kind of funny to me because overall, I'm not a horror fan. There are very
Yep.
there are very few horror movies since 1970 that I consider even good. It's not my gig because most of them nowadays, there's a handful that are good, but most of them nowadays really feel like they spend more time using music and jump scares than actual psychological, good writing and stuff.
Mhm.
You know, I always go back to the Universal monster movies and the Hammer horror and stuff like that if I want something like that. But there are a few, and I did pick mostly more modern movies. Well, most of them were made after 1970. I do have two older ones, and one of them is right on the cusp. It's like 68.
And I think that's really funny because I also am not that big a horror buff.
Yeah.
Horror is not my, like, I'm more of a I don't like horror so much as monster hunting.
Yeah. There you go.
Which gets lumped in with horror, but really is action with, people. Yeah. One is about the monsters being difficult for humanity to overcome, or impossible to overcome, and the other is let's get out there and kick some monster butt.
Yes. Now, what's interesting is that when I first got into comics, after a couple freelance gigs, most of what I was getting was horror, and that's because I became really good friends with Steve Niles and got into a situation where he kind of opened some doors for me. And because it was Niles opening doors, and Niles is, he's kind of considered one of the masters of horror for comic books, So I've written 30 Days of Night. I wrote the Savage book for Image. I wrote Grim Fairy Tales stories, and some of their other horror stuff. The Strange Tales stories for Image that I did with Steve. So I've written quite a bit of horror, and even the novels I write are urban fantasy, which is, a world where vampires and werewolves and stuff all live. But I don't watch horror. And my ex-wife is a huge Lovecraft fan. Yeah. She was constantly reading Lovecraft. So I would get offers, like I got an offer one night to pitch for a Nightmare on Elm Street series, and had to run to Best Buy and buy copies of Nightmare on Elm Street and Freddy versus Jason so I could actually put a pitch together.
Yeah. It's funny too, because I've also, like, mostly kid oriented, so some more spooky than scary, but like my Eisner nomination, which I have to mention contractually every other week.
Yes.
Was for a kid's horror book, spooky horror book. John Carpenter presents Storm Kid's Stanley's Ghost. I did 3 Twisted Journeys books. They're kind of where you pick your own path through the story, which is kind of a comic prose mix. Those were all horror related. There's a tinge of horror to the Viking Queen stuff, but there always is with sword and sorcery, I feel. But yeah, it was just for a while there, and I did a werewolf story, a ghost, a zombie story. I contributed to the Moonstone Monsters, Dead Moon Rising prose anthology.
Yeah, I wrote their Dracula one, their vampire one.
I was so embarrassed though when they first got the Kolchak license, and they were like, "Hey, you want to write Kolchak?" And I'm like, I have to admit, I'm the comic book writer who doesn't know Kolchak. Like, I saw a couple of them.
Yeah.
I was never the hardcore. And I'm like, look, I've got like a half dozen friends who would be much better at this than I would, because I don't have the love for that character that they do. And I'm like, shut up, I'll write it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but
what's funny is we've done a couple Pop Go the Writers that have been specials where we focus on the TV series Mannix.
Yeah.
And my friend Irene comes in, and she's kind of the Mannix expert at this point for me. And she has actually accused me of giving her a very specific phobia for one of the horror things I did. I did a Wonderland annual for Zenoscope, and in it, this woman is crushed by a bookcase. And now she can't go near a bookcase without wondering if it's going to tip over and crush her. So she says that there's now, she suffers from a phobia created by me, fear of being crushed by a bookcase. I'm like, all right, it's weirder things to be known for, but you know.
Yeah, there you go. Hey, we all have to have our niche.
Yes, especially if it's filled with bookcases. All right,
good place for a bookcase, a niche.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. So, Mr. Story, would you like to go first or second today?
You want a Rochambeau for it?
Sure. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Did we just both? We're both writers. Of course, we went for paper. Yeah. Okay, I'll go first.
Okay.
It's like that's too good. Pen. I picked pen. So you were talking about the early Universal monsters, and we had Dracula in 31, and then we had Frankenstein, I think, in 32, 33.
I think it was 31 as well.
Oh, okay.
Let me see, I got it right here. It's 31.
But we did not get the original Wolfman until 41, I think.
Yeah.
And I love this film. I love it beyond what is rational based on the film itself. I mean, it's like the for those who don't know, it's set in Wales. Actually, only son of the Talbot family, Larry, comes back from America to live in this tiny Welsh village, and
played by Lon Chaney Jr.
Lon Chaney Jr. Who has a magnificently put upon visage, which I'm sure had nothing to do with his years of hard drinking. No. But he comes back. This is the way that they explain how Claude Rains, with his very dapper, posh British accent, has a son who's like, "Gee, Dad, what are we gonna do about this?" Although they don't explain why almost everybody else also has very close to an American accent.
Yeah.
So it's this little town populated by Americans in Wales, and
like you do, yes.
And Lon kind of falls for this girl he sees in town, and he ends up going to. There's a gypsy camp, and I know gypsy is not the correct term, that it's Roma or the Romani, but at the time that was how it was described. So apologies, for using the terminology. He goes to this camp where they're having kind of a fair, and a lady's doing fortune telling, and gets very, very frightened when she tries to read his palm, and he ends up hearing. I'm trying to remember the exact. Anyway, long story short, he goes to the aid of some girls, young women, who are frightened by a canine of some sort. He ends up getting bitten, and of course, as we now all know, even a man whose heart is pure oh, good Lord, how did I blank on? Even man who heart is pure and something. Wow, boy, that is really bad. Because I know that poem by heart, except now.
That's the way it works.
But yes, there were actually two versions of it. But the initial one was even a man who is pure of heart. Oh shoot. Come on, Paul. Pure of heart and says his prayers by night can become a wolf when the wolf's bane blooms and the autumn moon is bright. Which a lot of people go, that's not right. It's when the moon is full and bright, which they did in the second appearance of the wolf. They changed it. But so he becomes a werewolf. He ends up going out and tearing up a few people, and he's trying to figure out what's going on. And meanwhile, he and the girl are falling more in love. And it's a big. There's so atmospheric. There's bleak woods and fog drifting everywhere and moonlight. One of the greatest transformation sequences at that time, where he just as he transforms, they just take a shot, then they stop and put a little more makeup on and take another shot, and so it's like the hair's growing all over his face. Tragically, his father uses a silver wolf's headed cane to bludgeon the wolf to death, and then it turns out to be Larry, and it's fairly simplistic by today's standards. Certainly, the werewolf comes up and usually chokes people.
Yeah,
that was sort of the universal movie monster standard. Vampires choke people, werewolves choke, Frankenstein's monster choke people.
Yeah.
But it was at the same time there was a certain pathos that Chaney Jr. brought to the role, and it was shot so atmospherically. I love it. I've gone on probably too long about it, but the one thing I do want to say is this is how we think of werewolves today. Bitten by a werewolf, full moon, transformation, silver's the only thing that kills it. The werewolf rules were almost entirely written for this movie.
Yes.
It established what we now think of the werewolf rules, and they are not from folklore directly. There's many other ways that people become werewolves in folklore. Silver is not necessarily an element of the ways to deal with them. Full moon, most of the time you put on a scrap of wolf skin and recite a chant or smear an ointment and transform the wolf. They also don't explain why the werewolf that bit him looked like a wolf, whereas Lon Chaney Jr. looked like a wolf man.
It's a transitional thing. He gets more and more wolf-like each month. But yeah, and by the way, hi Cody.
Hello, Cody.
Thanks for joining us tonight, and everybody else who's watching. I think when you look at the Universal monster movies like The Wolfman, one of the things that shows just how good those movies were is how they're still popular today. Yet every time they try to remake it, it never does quite as well because it doesn't hold up. They did the Benicio del Toro, Anthony Hopkins remake maybe a decade ago or so.
Which wasn't bad.
No, it wasn't bad.
Yeah.
But it doesn't compare. It just lacks in comparison. And they're currently putting together another take on it with Ryan Gosling as the Wolfman, and it's going to be a modern take on it. So I guess we can assume that the Dark Universe is officially dead.
Yes. He'll be the Goose Man.
Now, since you went Universal Monsters, I'm going to go ahead. I've got one as well. Now, most people would think that I was going to pick Creature from the Black Lagoon, which I have said is one of my favorite.
Yep.
But the James Whale Frankenstein movie is just, so good.
Yeah.
It is just something about the iconic moments in that film. Boris Karloff as the monster, we now assume that is what the monster looks like. You know, when you think of Frankenstein's monster, you think of Boris Karloff. And there's been many other tapes. Hammer Horror had their version of it. When Kenneth Branagh and Robert De Niro did a remake of it, De Niro had his version. Nobody thinks of those. You know, probably the only other one you might picture is The Incredible Art of Bernie Wrightson from when he adapted Mary Shelley's novel into drawings. But bottom line is, when we think of the monster, it is that. It is Boris Karloff from the James Whale 1931 movie. When we think of Dr. Frankenstein, Colin Clive's just mad utterance of, "It's alive!" I mean, that is what we go to. It is such an amazing movie. And, you know, I look back at the other ones in that line, they're all really good. But this one is an artistic level a little above all the others. You know, Edward Van Sloan, Frederick Kerr, John Bowles, all these great character actors, but Dwight Fry as Fritz, who was basically the version of Igor. Again,
it is so interesting how things have evolved, and again, even with Fritz becoming in people's head Igor.
Yes.
Even though,
the scene with the little girl and the flowers, and it just and strangling. By the way, yes, he's Paul was right. They do strangle. That is their gig. But you watch that movie, it is so iconic that when they went to make Young Frankenstein, they wanted so much to have that iconic look that they did it in black and white, even though the studio didn't want that. The studio's like, it's 1977. We're not going to put out a black and white film. And Mel Brooks and Gene Wilder stuck to their guns. And they went to the home of the guy that created the sets for the 1931 movie and said, "Do you have drawings or the blueprints for those things?" And he's like, "Oh, yeah, sure, no problem. But I've got the actual props in my garage. Do you want those?" And they went, "Yeah." So when you watch Young Frankenstein, it's the same sets for the laboratory.
Yeah.
You know, and they still look amazing. And it just goes to show, just they shortcut movies so much nowadays. I mean, come on, the making of this movie has become a great movie. The one with Brendan Fraser and Ian McKellen.
Of Gods and Monsters?
Of Gods and Monsters, yeah. That's about James Whale and the making of it and his relationship with this young man and stuff like that. So, yeah, it is just, to me, it is one of the best horror movies ever. It's got heart. It's, you know, there's just so many iconic moments from the movie that we just assume. It's like, if you ask very few people can divorce it from the source material. I don't know anybody who sits down to read Mary Shelley's Frankenstein and doesn't picture Boris Karloff as the monster, or Clive.
Colin Clive.
Colin Clive, yes. I keep wanting to say Clive Owens or Clive Cussler, which are two very different people.
Yes, yeah. Or Clive Revill.
Yeah. Or Clive Anderson, if you're a fan of the old Whose Line Is It Anyway?
He would have made a great Dr. Frankenstein, actually.
He would have.
Yeah, I've seen some of the weird things that he assembled on that show.
And Ryan Stiles would be the monster.
But it would be, and Ryan Stiles as the monster
Yes.
in sitcom fashion.
And Colin Montgomery would have to be Igor.
Mockery?
Yeah, Mockery, sorry.
Yep. No, that's
a little slow tonight,
Yeah,
But,
no, that's all right.
Yeah. So, to me, Corey says, how did you guys like Van Helsing with Hugh Jackman? Guilty pleasure movie. It still has that old feel to it when it came out. I should have just clicked that onto the screen. I got to tell you, I actually liked the Van Helsing movie, especially the music. There's that one moment where they're riding across the country and there's this Spanish guitar or steel guitar music that plays as they're riding. And I will still bring that up and just listen to that song. It's just so cool sounding. So, yeah, I'm a fan of that. I liked the movie. I did.
I enjoy it. I don't believe there should be guilt in enjoying what you enjoy, so I don't consider it a guilty pleasure, but I understand why people are critical of it.
Yeah.
It's
not a great movie. It's a fun movie, and I'm happy with fun movies.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
I wouldn't put it on this list, but and by the way, if you haven't read it, there is a comic prequel done around that time by Josh Dysart, written by Josh Dysart, that involves the Van Helsing character and sort of an Isle of Dr. Moreau story. Moreau story. Yeah. So look for that. It's from Dark Horse, I believe. But there was our friend Josh.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? I had something to do with him writing that.
Yeah?
Not really. I once made a comic book template in Word that he uses a version of to this very day.
Nice.
So anything Josh writes, I take credit for.
Before we go any farther, hey guys, remember, hit the like and subscribe buttons, will you? It really helps us out. I'm trying to build the audience here. I'm going to start doing more stuff on the site here. I've got another Psychology of Villainy video in the works. I've already recorded it. I've just got to do the other side on it. And if you haven't watched the one Psychology of Villainy I did put up about Lex Luthor, you might be alone, because that is our best performing video on the YouTube channel at 11,000 hits.
Nice.
Yeah, so it's pretty crazy. But there will be another one. I'm going to take on the Riddler. So I've already written it. I've already recorded it. I just got to edit it, put in the images and stuff. And so hopefully I'll get a chance to do that in November and get it posted. All right. But yeah, please hit the like and subscribe buttons. Let's go on. Mr. Story, what is the second movie on your list?
The second movie on my list, and you are going to detect a pattern here, is An American Werewolf in London. It is it was made back in the 80s, written and directed by John Landis, who I know.
See you next Wednesday.
Yeah, I know he has some issues, but I thought
it was his son that had the issues. He was fine.
Oh well, I mean, Landis does still have the whole Twilight Zone thing, where even though I think he was many people, even though he was not absolved, what's the word I'm thinking of, acquitted, still feel that his handling of the Twilight Zone set safety resulted in the accident that happened there. Yes. Considering the
yes. But let's focus on the movie and not the. Yeah.
Yes. Also, he raised his son, who is considered in many respects problematic these days. But let's get to American Werewolf in London. Two American hikers in the moors of Scotland, who one of them is savaged by a beast. The other is killed outright. And Jenny Agutter, as David Lowe has stated, Jenny Agutter is a good thing to have wholesome sexiness. She plays the nurse who nurses David, played by David McNaughton, back to health. You may, for those who are too young to go see this movie, but old enough to remember, you may know David McNaughton as the Dr. Pepper guy. He used to do their commercials, but he has an excellent turn as a troubled and disturbed victim of a animal attack, who eventually finds out he's a werewolf. And there are some amazing amazing transformation effects. For its time, they were as impressive as the Wolfman transformation was for its time. They did stuff with like air bladders under this under fake skin to make like knuckles pop out, and he had this mechanism where this snout stretched out, and he actually turns into a large wolf rather than a wolf man. But just some amazing stuff. Jenny Agutter is the love interest. She's the nurse, helps him, nurses him back to health, and they fall into a romantic entanglement. It's exciting. It's funny. Griffin Dunne. Griffin Dunne? No. Yes, Griffin Dunne as his pal, who starts appearing to him as in visions, all torn up by the animal. Just amazing prosthetic makeup, and he keeps on deteriorating the longer it goes. Convincing him, he and a bunch of other ghosts trying to convince David he has to kill himself to end this curse. It's pretty amazing. Some incredible jump scares and just some again pathos and just impressive special effects, impressive acting. I really, really love that movie. David points out practical effects by Rick Baker, who is a genius and a legend.
I was just trying. I could remember Baker. I couldn't remember his first name. I kept thinking Kenny Baker. I was about to look it up. Thank you, David.
Thanks. Yeah. So it was one of the first modern horror movies that impressed me to that degree. Because it was as impressive as all that stuff was, it was still about David's emotional struggle, and that of the nurse, and basically everybody involved was struggling. I don't know if it had anything to do with the inspiration for Werewolves of London, or if that was by Warren Zevon, but that might have been the original werewolf. And it's just a fantastic film. Is it on your top 10 or 15 there, Dan?
I saw it a long time ago, and I know it's a really good movie.
Yeah,
but it's been a long time since I've seen it.
Yeah. Plus, amazing soundtrack. I forgot to say, they took a bunch of popular songs from the 60s and 70s with moon or wolf themes and worked it into.
So, all right. Now I'm gonna again, great movie. John Landis I actually like him as a director. He puts in the phrase "See you next Wednesday" either as a mention, or in that particular movie, it's the title of the movie they go see in the theater. So "See you next Wednesday" is in all his movies. I almost met him one time. I was at Comic-Con, and I'm walking through the Dark Horse booth, and Scott Alley, who also a little problematic now, was talking to him, told him, hang on a second, stepped away to mention something to me. And I told him, you do not walk away from John Landis to come talk to me. That just doesn't happen. I said, because the hierarchy here, go back to him. You can talk to me later.
I actually met John Landis at Comic-Con.
Yeah.
And I was so thrown off that he was just walking through Artist Alley that I could not even remember his movies. Like, I knew I appreciated the movies he'd done. Animal House, American Werewolf in London. I actually really like his vampire movie, Innocent Blood. Mm-hmm. I could not remember a single thing, so I just kept saying, "Oh, I just really enjoy your work," and blah, and never gave him any specifics. He was very gracious. So, I mean, my experience with him, very nice. That. But that was that's the weirdness of Comic-Con, especially San Diego Comic-Con. I'm sorry, Comic-Con International San Diego.
Yeah, it's always surprising who you're going to stand next to. I've walked up and then suddenly found myself in a conversation with Gene Simmons from Kiss. It's a very strange place. Yep. I'm going to move on to my next movie, which is probably the biggest time jump, because my first movie was 1931. This is 2018. This is the most modern movie in it, and it's probably one very few of you have heard of. It's called Secret Santa. Now, I didn't mean to see this film. I am friends with... I got involved with Mike Wellman, the writer and owner of the comic shop. At the time, it was the Comic Bug. Yeah. Now he owns an Atomic Basement in Long Beach. But they used to do these performances at the Comic Bug where this group of actors would come in and they would perform comic scripts or movie scripts that never happened. You know, they did the Justice League that was supposed to happen. They did a few others. Well, I got involved with them. Mike knew I've got an acting background. He invited me in, so I got to meet this group of actors, and it's all led by a director named Adam Marcus. And Adam is known for, he and his wife wrote the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3D, I think it is. He directed Jason Goes to Hell, and he's done some other movies. Well, he also teaches this acting class with all these students. So this is where a lot of these students came from. Well, we're at the LA Comic-Con. The Stan Lee Kamikaze was what it was known at the time. And he was debuting his new little film called Secret Santa. And he really wanted me to come see it. And Adam is one of the most amazing, friendly, energetic, just well-wishing guys you ever met. You feel like you could do anything after spending 10 minutes talking to Adam. So even though I'm not a horror movie fan, I went to this screening, and I spent the next hour and 29 minutes with either my jaw on the ground from just the over-the-top gore to literally laughing my ass off. This is honestly one of the biggest roller coaster rides I'd ever been on, because there were so many just genuinely funny moments, and then it would be followed up by this incredibly horrific, gory, so over the top that it becomes surreal moments. And it works so well the way he combines these two things. Now, the story, it's written by Adam and his wife, Deborah Sullivan, and it's directed by Adam, and it's him and his group of actors, but it doesn't feel like that. This is as good as any movie you'd see in the theater. There's nothing about it that says low budget or anything like that, okay? This, like I said, this has gone on to win a bunch of awards at different festivals. Now, the story behind it is it's Christmas, like you'd guess, and this group of, or this family this very dysfunctional family gets together every year at a cabin in the woods. The problem is the parents are divorced, all the kids are now adults, and they have a lot of issues, and they all really kind of hate each other under the surface. And that in itself is a good setup for kind of a comedy movie-ish. Well, one of the daughters, who thinks that her entire life has been ruined by her sister, decides to borrow a chemical from her daddy's company. And what it is, it's a weapons-grade sodium pentothal. A truth serum that has this ability to lower inhibitions, which just makes this whole thing go way over the top, because now she's put it in the punch that everybody's drinking. Not everybody, but so the majority of the people are drinking this punch that's also alcoholic. So they start saying all the truths that they're supposed to be kept hidden, you know? So you've got these, like I said, the matriarch and patriarch don't get along anymore. Both of them cheated in the relationships, but cheated. The father cheated with the wife's sister, and the mother cheated with the husband's son from his first marriage. So it's like really bad.
Yeah.
But they still try to have Christmas together, and then all of the relationships. So it's the kids and their spouses and stuff. The one son, the stepson, shows up, and he's this really oversexed guy who's constantly hitting on his stepsisters, even though he brings this hooker with him as his date, who also used to be a guy. And just, it is, there's the racist uncle. So you have this dynamic, and then you add in this weapons grade truth serum that makes them all start telling the truth, getting angry at each other, and that anger builds to where they start trying to kill each other. And they're killing each other with Christmas ornaments and chasing each other through the snow. And literally you are laughing while you're just the gore comes out. And it's such a well done movie. Even the opening credits, if you're not laughing during the opening credits, there's something wrong with you.
Mm-hmm.
The racist uncle is saying stuff in there that's just wrong, but so funny. And it just, he's talking to his nephew, and the nephew's like, "Oh my God," But the cast is, it's a bunch of up and coming actors. Curtis Fortier, who's actually a good friend of mine. Will Dixon, Drew Lynch, who is a stand-up comedian who you might know him. He has a stutter, so it's part of his act. Deborah Sullivan. Sadly, John Gilbert passed away just recently. He plays the father, and you would have seen him on NCIS and Law and Order. He did a bunch of those things, but he plays does an amazing job as the father. It is Ryan Lee Seaton as the daughter who thinks everybody is out to get her, versus Leslie Keese's the perfect daughter. I mean, it really is. This is the movie for anybody who likes horror and dysfunctional families. I absolutely love this movie. I reviewed it for Bleeding Cool, and I said the best way I could describe it is it's fucking brilliant. Adam put that on the DVD cover.
Nice.
So, Mike, that's the only quote anybody ever took and put for a movie is that one. So
there you go.
Yeah, I do recommend it. It is available on video on demand, on Blu-ray, on DVD, all of that. It is just a really well done movie. And it falls in the horror category, but it's not jump scares and, slasher movie. It's something we can identify with, as we all have those family members. We all have that uncle, that type of thing. So,
yeah.
Secret Santa. I do recommend it highly.
All right. I feel I have to take this time to say, I also know Mike Wellman. Hi, Mike. Good guy. Haven't seen him for a while because I haven't been out to the West Coast in some time.
He was on on the show one night. during WandaVision. Yeah, when we were covering WandaVision early on for Popco the Writers.
Yeah, before I joined the crew.
Yes, back when you were just a guest star.
Yes.
Before you became recurring.
Yes. Yeah. I don't know if I'm really recurring at this point. I think I'm a co-star.
All right.
I'm not saying, it's the Dan Wickline and,
yeah. You're not getting a raise, Paul.
Oh, you could double what I'm getting paid now.
True. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Which is the same as I'm getting paid. So
yes, exactly. So, are we at transition time?
Yes.
Okay. And there was an awful segue.
We're gonna have to go a little faster as we've gone through 4. We have 6 left, and we're halfway through the show. All right.
Here we go. My next one is kind of strange for me because I do not like zombie movies. I was not I even though I'm from Detroit, I was late to the Evil Dead stuff. I think I saw the movie I'm going to talk about next before I saw Night of the Living Dead. But this one won me over heart and soul and brain. And I'm talking about the brilliant Shaun of the Dead by Simon Pegg and his crew of just wacky misfits. And I include Bill, and I always want to say Nighy, but it's Nye.
Yeah.
In that, just a tremendous, hilarious send up and love letter to zombie movie. The cast is phenomenal. We got in addition to Pegg, we've got it's directed by Edgar Wright, of course. Mm-hmm. We got Nick Frost, Kate Ashfield, Bill Nye, Lucy Davis, who I love, Dylan Moran, who is hilarious. Go see Black's Books. Peter Serafinowicz, and a bunch of other people who I'm going to forget to mention, even though I'm reading it off a list at this point. It's just it combines horror, humor, and emotion so well. It just that's my quick summation.
It is a fantastic movie. I do enjoy that one. It does kind of start the trend of doing humorous zombie movies that they continued with Zombieland and Warm Bodies and stuff like that. So it did start that trend.
Yeah.
So, and the whole idea, and it is part of the kind of a series that they did with the World's End Tavern and Hot Fuzz. Those are all kind of collected together in the Edgar Wright movies.
Yeah. And just, very good stuff. So now I challenge you to be as concise with your next pick.
Well, I don't have to be as concise because you just saved us a lot of time. So
I did.
Yeah, I'm gonna talk about this one probably a little more because, again, like the last one, I feel somewhat connected to it. Because going back to 2007, this is the movie that put Steve Niles on the map, or from the series 30 Days a Night. This put IDW on the map. There was no IDW publishing. I mean, they had done a couple Ashley Wood books, and they were just starting out when 30 Days of Night hit.
Yeah,
which surprised from what I remember, it surprised the hell out of Steve Niles. He thought the book Fused he was doing at Image was going to be the big hit.
Yeah,
30 Days a Night was just something he was doing over at IDW because they asked him for something, and he was working on it with Ben Templesmith, who he had done Medieval Spawn or Spawn the Dark Ages or whatever it was called. Yeah. So it was just a kind of thing he was doing on the side. And then it got into a bidding war from all these different studios that ended up selling for $1 million, which was one of the biggest price tags for any indie comic at the time.
What I just real quick, I talked to Steve at a con and discussing the concept, and he's like, yeah, I don't know. I talked to a bunch of people, and everybody seemed completely disinterested in it before it actually landed at IDW. And I'm like, you're kidding me. The concept is just so brilliant.
Oh, yeah. The whole idea that there's this place in Alaska called Barrow, Alaska, where it goes dark for 30 days. There's no sunlight. And a group of vampires head there for like buffet at the Golden Corral. It's the basics of the movie. But the cast that they put together, David Slade directed it. It was on a screenplay that Steve was part of, along with Stuart Beattie and Brian Nelson. But they got Josh Hartnett, who was huge at the time, Melissa George, Ben Foster, Danny Houston, Mark Boone Jr., just so Manu Bennett. Bennett, who went on to be Deathstroke in the Arrowverse. Just so many good actors. And they're doing this little vampire film is the best way to describe it. Yeah. And the idea is that they, the way I like to describe it is you can take the vampires out of the movie and it still becomes it's still a good movie, because you could make it Nazi soldiers. You could set it in World War II as a small town that's being invaded by Nazi soldiers, and it still works because it's an invading force coming into town, and it's the people trying to survive it.
Yeah.
It works if it's aliens. It works. That's the beauty of this movie, is that it's about the people of the town, the emotion, and just, it's so well shot. David Slade was just coming off of Hard Candy when he did this, and it just clicked perfectly. It's sad that they did a follow-up movie and it just didn't do. I think it went direct to video.
Yeah, I saw it on Sci-Fi. So yeah.
But this one, it did really well in the theater. I mean, it got a lot of people's attention, and this was at a time when the biggest vampire thing around was freaking Twilight.
Yeah.
So many people were happy to get real vampires again, almost like Nosferatu-style vampires, instead of the ones that glistened in the sun. That was a big thing. And this all came from Steve Niles and his idea and Ben Templesmith's art. And I think it was the combination of the two that really clicked, because Ben is so good at creating the atmosphere with his art that makes this story work. And
the vampires that as he drew them were just hideous.
Yes.
So when they went full vamp.
Yeah. And having gotten to play in this universe a little bit with some of the later miniseries, it is an honor to have done that, because it really is such it's such a simplistic story. And I've met many writers who went, oh yeah, I had a similar idea, or I thought about doing that.
Yeah.
Like, well, you might have, but he did it.
Yeah.
And sold it, and it came out. And so, yeah, this is a great movie. If you haven't watched it yet and you want to watch a good vampire movie that's not glistening in the sun, check out. Yeah.
If you want your vampires as horrific creatures of the night, which, by the way, what a title, 30 Days of Night. Simple, but with enough mystery to it. It's just, I would not be at all surprised if one of the things that really, caught people was the title. Yeah. But if you want savage, nasty creatures as your vampires, instead of I've been cursed for so long and I don't want to eat people, but I guess I've got to, so nibble.
And Everybody I love has died. I can't stand immortality. Well,
Yeah.
don't play with your food.
Yeah. Yeah, at some point, so I like how they all turned into Morrissey from the 80s. Oh, blood is murder. Yeah, I get so tired. It seems to me that sometimes just people work so hard at like redeeming the monsters.
Yeah.
Oh, but they're only monsters because of this, or they're only monsters because of that. And it's like, yeah, but there are, you know, human monsters who are just monsters,
Yep.
that maybe didn't have horrible traumatic events turn them that way. Um, at some point I like a dose of evil with my mixed in with the sympathetic creature.
Yep. All right, Mr. Story, time for your fourth.
Well, my fourth, I may not be able to speak at as a to the same degree of brevity because I love this movie to a ridiculous degree. It had spawned one of the iconic lines of horror comedy, Wolfman Scott Nards. It is the Monster Squad from 1987. Shane Black, Fred Decker, um, uh, uh, and it's it's a bunch of kids who are monster fanatics, and then real monsters start showing up, and they have to use their knowledge to try and help save the day, along with um, oh god, what do they call him? Scary German guy, and an annoying kid sister who thankfully does not get a repeat of the Frankenstein with the little girl by the river um, scene. Uh, it's so good. It's so weird. Duncan Regar makes a wonderfully scary uh, Dracula. He is insidious. He is perfidious. He's Agatha Harkness on speed. No, he's terrifying. I realized I was doing it was Agatha after all song, so I decided to jump in and admit it. Yeah, he's terrific. I've got to remember the guy's name who plays. Tom Noonan is fantastic as Frankenstein's monster, and John Grease as who I always think of Laszlo from Real Genius was great as the desperate man who also turned out to be a werewolf. They had an amazing Gillman suit. I don't know who was in that thing, but like they didn't do the creature from the Black Lagoon because technically that's Universal. But it was still the Universal monster. There was a mummy, there was a Gill Man, there was Frankenstein, there was the werewolf, there was Dracula. I mean, but it was an interesting spin. It is a little painful to watch every once in a while now because it is a product of its time. There are a lot of jokes, gay jokes that were pretty standard at the time that now you look at and go, ooh, ooh. Using homosexuality as a pejorative, but and some other stuff too that you kind of go, ooh. But that happens with any older movie. But the kids put in amazing performances as well. There were, and I was really, really impressed with it. It's just fun. I watch it every year. And there's a moment where werewolf jumps out in front of a kid, and they're like, "Ah, what do I do?" The other kid screams, "Kick him in the nards! Wolfman don't have nards! Kick him!" So he kicks him, and Wolfman goes, "Ooh!" And then the immortal line, "Wolfman's got nards," which is made into which is also the title of the documentary that was made by Andre Gower, who was the lead kid actor, and he has now made a documentary called Wolfman's Got Nards about the making of this thing. And a friend of mine who worked on the DVD extras for the Monster Squad, like 25th anniversary DVD collection, Michael Felsher, whose house I was celebrating Halloween at just a scant few hours ago, also appears in the documentary, which is kind of a kick. I was watching it with a friend and said, "Oh, I wonder if they're going to have Felsher in here," and then he literally appears on screen. Didn't have to even Candyman him. Anyway, it's just a fun, weird, funny, scary show. I love it.
Yeah. Just want to make a quick note here.
Shut up, Paul.
I have a feeling that once we get to the end, we're both probably thinking of other movies we could have added to the list.
Yeah.
So there's going to be like an honorable mention list at the end.
Sure. Yeah. I love the fact that we don't really like horror, but here's these movies we love.
Though we do seem to have humor is a big touch to our horror movies.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
I think it makes the like just emotionally dark stuff all the way through. It's just like or splatter, scare, doesn't appeal.
Yeah.
But we now are looking for your fourth one.
All right, I've got to go with, since we're talking the mix of horror and humor. Probably this may be the only time I started with the third movie in a franchise.
Mm-hmm.
But you should, because this one is so good. And where the others are a little more true horror, this has a little more adventure, has a little more humor. And of course, we're talking about Army of Darkness. Sam Raimi, third time out with Bruce Campbell as Ash Williams. Just iconic character. Some of the lines, the going for the Nosferatu book, and Klaatu Verata, because he can't remember the magic words. Give me some sugar, baby. All of his one-liners and stuff are so good. But this takes this sardonic hardware store clerk and transports him. And this is a guy who's already fought demons in the woods, had to cut off his own hand and attach a chainsaw to it. This is the further adventures of him, where he accidentally gets transported back to 1300 AD with his car, where he has to retrieve the Necronomicon and battle an army of the dead just so he can get back home. And M. Beth Davids is in it, Marcus Gilbert, Ian Abercrombie, Richard Grove. Bridget Fonda appears in this. Of course, it's a Sam Raimi movie, so Ted Raimi pops up in it. It's just... Billy Moseley even pops up at one point. The movie is just so much fun. I had never seen it. I had a model back in... It had to be the early 2000s. Was coming out, and she's like, "Oh, hey, well," because she was going to stay with me. She was coming out from Arizona, and we were going to shoot. And I said, "Well, yeah, no problem. What do you want to do when you're here?" She's like, "Oh, can we do like a movie night? I'd love to watch Army of Darkness again." I'm like, "Okay, I don't have it, but I can get it." So I picked it up and watched it, and oh my God, that was so good. and just surprised me. Now I went back after that and watched Evil Dead, and where it's interesting, and you can see a lot of the roots of what Sam Raimi does that you see in some of the Spider-Man movies, even the Doc Ock scene where the arms are killing everybody. You're like, oh, yep, he's got that's his horror stuff. And we're sure going to see a lot of that in the new Doctor Strange movie, in the Multiverse of Madness.
Yeah.
But this is probably him hitting his stride. It's like, you've been doing these low budget movies. Here's cash. Go make something.
Mm-hmm.
And what he did with Army of Darkness is just superb. It's that fine balance between horror elements, action adventure, and humor. And most of the humor comes from Bruce Campbell. You know, it's like I couldn't imagine anybody else playing that role.
Yeah, local boy. I'm actually about 5 miles from his the high school where he went right now. He comes back every once in a while and like gives a. I know he's done appearances there before, so.
No, it is a fun movie. It is, you got the gore, you got the Deadites, but it's also, if you think about it, it's a unique horror movie in that it's not zombies. It's not, I mean, it's its own mythos.
Yeah.
You know, Dynamite has been going like crazy doing comics based off of it. Another company does comics based off of the Evil Dead part of it. So they've actually split the franchise 2 different directions.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just, you know, and Campbell, it's a combination of the brilliance of Sam Raimi and the presence of Bruce Campbell that makes the movie work. Like I said,
Yeah.
I can, now that I think about it, maybe, just maybe John Barrowman could do something similar. But you've got to be larger than life. You've got to be,
Yes.
you know, and Bruce Campbell brings that to every role he plays, whether it's his cameos in the Spider-Man movies, his turn as Elvis in Bubba Hotep, his time on Burn Notice. It's just there's this presence that is Bruce Campbell. And
I can't believe you didn't mention Jack of All Trades.
Jack of All Trades, a great series that didn't last long enough. Or
and Briscoe County Jr.
Yes. So with Julius Curry. So yeah, just it's if you're a Bruce Campbell fan, you haven't seen Army of Darkness, then I don't really think you're a Bruce Campbell fan. But watch it; it's a great movie. So, Mr. Story, back to you in this tennis match of horror.
And this is my final entry, I believe. So I'll have to wax poetic. Little movie from 2000. You may have noticed. No, you have to play the song from Young Frankenstein.
I was trying to, but I couldn't remember it.
Okay.
Oh, sweet mystery of life, at last I found you.
It's a little flick from 2000, indie horror film, which I found. I'll get back to one of the things that makes me laugh about it. That's not intended to, but Canadian film called Ginger Snaps, about these two morbidly these two sisters. They view it as them against the world. They are morbidly obsessed with death. They have a kind of a suicide pact if they don't get out of the town by a certain time, because they're just so disgusted with this town. And the older one, Ginger, is played by Catherine Isabelle, who also has did a couple of turns on the TV show Supernatural, and then Emily Perkins was a recurring character for a while on Supernatural. She plays the younger sister, and she was a huge fan of the writer of the Supernatural book series, who later turned out to be God. But there are these, like, they make these morbid videos of like people being, like one of them being hanged and another one like making it look like she's impaled by fence or stuff like this. And then the older sister gets attacked by an animal and starts to undergo a dramatic change of personality as she starts to get very outgoing and kind of exude a sort of animal sensuality, and as you might guess, and starts growing hair where you don't expect to.
New Jersey?
Huh?
New Jersey?
Yes. Why are we talking about Buckaroo Banzai and Jeff Goldblum?
I don't know.
So yes, she is turning into a werewolf, and they're trying to stop it. The younger sister Bridget is getting so frustrated too, because Ginger, as she gets more charismatic, starts to kind of enjoy the attention getting, and the younger sister's like, "Oh, it's us against the world. You're not supposed to, And so it becomes first. Ginger is afraid of what's happening to her. She starts to embrace what's happening to her. Bridget works with a guy who works for a florist, who is also a bit of a drug dealer, like a failed chemistry student from college who, sort of a drug dealer, who to try and figure out a cure for Bridget's condition, or for Ginger's condition. And as always, it's a werewolf movie, and as people may have noticed, I love me some werewolf movies. There's sort of the tragic end. It's funny, it's disturbing. Mimi Rogers turns in a wonderful performance as their kind of oblivious mom, who's like, "Oh, you guys, she's gonna be, more positive," and she's hilarious. It's a fun film. I thought it was weird. Ginger keeps getting hairier and hairier, but when she transforms into the werewolf, she's like mostly bald. I mean, it's like very patchy fur, and it's like, oh, that's a budgetary thing going on. But despite that, it's still wonderful, wonderful movie. I liked it a lot. So, and the sequels, Ginger Snaps 2 is a little weird, but I like it. Ginger Snaps 3 is bizarre because the two sisters, or rather their ancestors, show up in like the 18th century. And it turns into, they go to this fort, which is being attacked by a creature. It's odd but fun. Anyway, so I recommend all the Ginger Snaps films.
Okay.
And your last film, Dan?
My last film before we're going to do a speed round. I'm going to go back to the classic, the film that was an allegory for the Vietnam War, the film that started the whole zombie craze. Before this, there were no mindless zombies. They were all voodoo-based zombies, like White Zombie with Bela Lugosi. Night of the Living Dead. George A. Romero, I should say A, since George C. Romero is now writing comics. This is just a phenomenal movie. The way it's shot, the way it's made, This is 1968. This is a horror movie that starred a black actor, Dwayne Jones,
Yeah.
which was just not done to have a movie with a black lead. Judith O'Dea, Marilyn Eastman, Carl Hardman. I mean, most of these people, they're only household names because of people who loved this movie. But Night of the Living Dead is such. I had never seen it until late one night. Rob Zombie was hosting horror movies on AMC, and this was one of his picks. And I left it on, and just found myself mesmerized by the way it was filmed, the story, the actual zombies themselves they weren't gross. They were just dead people coming to life. And it was more about the survival. And that's kind of the blueprint for all zombie stories since, is you don't focus on the zombies, you focus on surviving. And that's what this was about. But yeah, it just was shockingly good. And how many people don't know they're coming to get you, Barbara Ann? Yeah. I mean, it's just such an amazing movie that if you would have told me beforehand that I would have liked it, I would have just not, there's no way. But I was so taken by this movie. And I mean, I still don't like horror, but this is such an amazing movie. And you got Barbara and Johnny visiting their father's grave at a remote cemetery. They come across these zombies. They run to the local farmhouse trying to find safety, and it just goes from there. And it's not a long movie. I think it comes in at about 90 minutes, 96 minutes. But it's a tight 96 minutes. There's not a lot of superfluous stuff. It is just a really, really strong, well-made movie. And it not only put werewolves on the map, but it showed what a genius George A. Romero is. So
I thought it was interesting that despite using the quote about, when hell is full, the dead shall walk the earth or whatever, it really doesn't come down to there was some weird meteor or something that had struck.
Yeah.
It's actually it's in a way it's sci-fi horror, not supernatural horror.
Yeah. Well, Bill Jemis's comic company, I don't remember the name of it. I think it was like Double Something or other. They recently did a
AWB?
No. This was they did a whole line of comics based off of that as the origin.
Ah.
There was like 8 different comics they were doing, and like I said, this was Bill Jemis's company. So I want to say
it is interesting that, and of course, famously, he forgot to put the copyright mark on it, and it went into the public domain immediately. But
yeah, so
hence So
that was 5 each, but we've still got about 10 minutes left, and I've got.
It's a shame you burned off the Frighteners last week.
Yeah, well, we can mention that here if you want to put that as one for the speed round.
Certainly.
I've got 4 that definitely deserve mention.
Okay.
The first being the original 1978 Halloween from John Carpenter.
Absolutely.
This to me is the best of the slasher film characters. You can have Freddy, you can have Jason. Michael Myers to me is probably the best written, and there's the other 2 haven't done a lot of new ones recently. You're still getting Halloween Kills this weekend, is in theaters.
Yep.
Jamie Lee Curtis as your main character, Donald Pleasance. I mean, and then the fact that the mask is a bleached out William Shatner mask.
Yeah.
Is still one of the best stories in Hollywood.
Yep. Bad Batch. Not to be confused with the Star Wars series.
Yeah. You got another one you want to throw in?
Yeah, actually, and sticking with the humor, the horror comedies, I can't talk about horror without mentioning Ghostbusters. You know, like we think of it as primarily a comedy,
Well,
but
yeah,
there's some like Dan Aykroyd's an actual student of the paranormal, um, to the extent, and in my opinion, know something that doesn't exist. But he's you know like he's seriously into this stuff, and that when they talk about what Tobin's spirit guide, like actual thing, I guess. And there's some really horrifying moments, like the moment when they go up to bother um, the librarian, um, and she goes full. Yeah, I mean, there's some really terrifying stuff in there, mixed in with obviously a really horrific,
yeah.
or really humorous movie. But yeah, it's a horror comedy, and it's a fantastic.
Mhm. Another one on my list of my honorable mentions. I've got three more. They're all vampire movies, oddly enough. But
Weird.
I've got to go with The Lost Boys.
Oh
Great
yeah,
soundtrack, great movie. Kiefer Sutherland, Jason Patrick, Corey Haim, Diane Wiest, Bernard Hughes, Kiefer Sutherland, Jamie Gertz, just Corey Feldman as well, Edward Herman. It is such a good vampire movie that you forget you're watching a vampire movie, you know? So for people who don't like horror movies, this is a great horror movie in that it's just about this small town in is it Santa Barbara or Santa something or other.
it's Santa Clara, I think they call
Santa
it.
Clara. And it's the best line in the whole movie. It's the last line. But the grandfather says, that's the only problem with Santa Clara. All the fucking vampires. And it's like, you didn't mention this when we moved here? So, great movie.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
You got another one, Paul?
Oh gosh, what I did. Come on, Paul. Oh yes. In keeping with our love of the Universal monsters, the original Dracula, the original Universal movies Dracula. I don't know if you can properly uh, uh, if we can properly understand what a kind of like edgy movie this was. I mean, Bela Lugosi had this like magnetism to him, and talk about like the women swooning and stuff. He his presence was so impressive, and it was mostly based on the stage play rather than the
Bram Stoker.
rather than the book itself. Although the stage play did carry, there was a lot of stuff. The guy who I can't remember his name, but the guy who played Fritz in Frankenstein was Renfield.
Dwight Frye.
Dwight Schrute. Just really creepy. Just like you're like, oh, please stop talking and squirming around and eating bugs. Mm-hmm. Just some amazing performances. I cannot remember the name of the actor who played Van Helsing. He was phenomenal. Yes, Edward Sloan.
Don't know why I'm able to pull these off the top of my head.
I'm just thankful for it. But yeah, it set the tone. I know there are people who are like, well, I like the Christopher Lee Dracula better, the Hammer Dracula better. Oh, I like Frank Langella better. Okay, but Bela Lugosi, he really that movie really set things in motion in a way that I don't think we can adequately understand. That compelled push forward the modern monster movie, and put horror on the map.
One of the most interesting things about that is they were filming the Spanish version of the movie at the same time with Spanish actors, and on the release that they did of the Blu-ray not that long ago, they included that on there as well. And there is some genuinely more creepiness in the Spanish version with some of the ways it was filmed, even though they were using the same sets, the same script, just in Spanish. But Yeah, it's pretty amazing how they did that. But all right, another one from my list, sticking with vampires. 1985. Again, 80s was really good for vampire movies. Directed by Tom Holland, Chris Sarandon, William Ragsdale, Amanda Bierce. Fright Night. Roddy McDowall. I mean, yeah, they did a remake of it, and I'm a huge fan of David Tennant, but still, the original Fright Night was just so good. Where you find out your neighbor's a vampire. You know, it just.
And everybody thinks you're cuckoo.
Yes. Such a good movie. Anything else, Paul? Because I got more and more keep popping up in my head.
What was the one that just popped up when you were talking about that? The Howling, the original Howling. It's kind of hard to take now because it is a product of the late 70s, because you're just sort of like, why are these people, this is all a little weird. Young Robert Picardo in that, who we later learned as the Doctor hologram on Voyager.
Yep.
But Dee Wallace Stone turned in a remarkable performance. It was a stab at a modern werewolf that was not, it was not beholden to the werewolf mythos that the Wolfman began. So yeah, that was it was atmospheric. It was startling. They had some amazing effects. I liked it.
I'm going to throw two more quick ones out there before we wrap up. Quentin Tarantino's From Dusk Till Dawn starts off. You think you're watching this true crime or this crime story about these two criminal brothers kidnapping this family, and you end up in the middle of this Mexican town at a strip club bar full of vampires. I mean, it's just so over the top that it's brilliant. And the other one I want to mention is also considered kind of the starting point for the modern day superhero movie, Blade. Yeah. You can throw the third one got a little weird. The second one is pretty good, but the first one is just so well done. And I hope when they decide to do another Blade movie with Mahershala Ali, that they're going to look at the original Wesley Snipes Blade. Yes. It was so well done. And so that's
Donald Logue was wonderful in that. Tracy Lords was really good.
Who played Deacon Frost?
I'll look it up because I.
All right. While he's looking it up, we're going to wrap this up. Thank you, guys. I hope you had a terrific Halloween. Thank you for joining us tonight. Lots of likes up there. I appreciate that. So if you haven't hit the like or the subscribe buttons, please do so now. It would be greatly appreciated. And as we wrap this up, does he find it?
Stephen Dorff.
Stephen Dorff as Deacon Frost. Really, so great horror movies. If you're looking for fun stuff to watch, you can take any of our initial 5 each or our honorable mentions. You won't go wrong. So,
I think we for two non-horror guys, I think we came up with a pretty good list.
Yeah, I know that there's a lot of people out there going to, oh my God, you didn't have this on there or that on there. We had nothing from Dario Argento. Well, because that's not our thing. I saw Malignant. It's not making the list. I'm sorry. But neither is The Conjuring or any other. So this is our horror movie list.
Yeah. And there's some stuff that I'm sure there's somebody out there going, what about a vampire in Brooklyn? But it's not Eddie Murphy, but somebody's out there saying that.
Love at First Bite.
Yeah.
They thought it was a black chicken. By the way, Love at First Bite and Zorro the Gay Blade are such funny movies that probably could never be made again.
George Hamilton. So underrated.
Absolutely. All right, guys, wrapping it up now. Thank you all. Paul, thanks for joining me once again. Hope you have a lovely Halloween. We will see you all next week with whatever topic we come up with.
See you then.
Good night, everybody. Really need to press that button sooner.